Hi everyone, we're now in lesson 3 and this is all about evaluating messages. Let's find out what is this topic all about as we go on with our discussions. So let's start. So here, the message is the information being communicated by a source to an audience. In verbal communication, the ultimate objective of the speaker is to send the message to the listeners as intended to be. And it is always a challenge for the speaker as to how he or she could deliver the actual message to the audience. On the other hand, written communication involves any type of message that makes use of the written word. It is essential and effective when words and phrases are used properly. So, why is message important? Have you ever been misunderstood or surprised by a reaction to your message? We may be certain of a message, its meaning and intent, and we assume that the message will be clear to the receiver. Without guidelines in place, evaluating our own messages may prove to be subjective exercise. Now, in evaluating a message, there are basically 5 questions to be asked, no? Or you need to know. So the first one is, what is the message? What is the purpose of the message? How is the message conveyed by the text or image? And then who is the target audience of the message? And then what other ways of presenting the messages are there? Now, later on, we will analyze a certain image and then we will use these 5 questions later on. Okay, then so let's start with a message, right? In rhetorical and communication studies, a message is defined as information conveyed by words, either in speech or writing, and other signs and symbols. A message, either verbal or non-verbal, is the content of the communication process. So here, let's go back. A little review about verbal and non-verbal content. A message may include verbal content such as written or spoken words, sign language, email, text messages, phone calls, snail mail, and sky writing. And that's according to John O. Burtis and Paul Determan note in their book Leadership, Communication, and Citizenship, adding that, according to them, intentionally or not, both verbal and non-verbal content is part of information that is transferred in a message. So that's according to the two authors. If non-verbal cues do not align with the verbal message, ambiguity is introduced even as uncertainty is increased. A message will also include non-verbal content such as meaningful behavior beyond words. This includes body movement and gestures, eye contact, artifacts, and clothing, as well as social variety, touch, and timing. The message in rhetoric. Rhetoric is the study and practice of effective communication. A rhetorical act, according to Karen Kors Campbell and Susan Scholz Huxman in their book, The Rhetorical Act, Thinking, Speaking, and Writing Critically. That's their book. Accordingly, it is an intentional, created, polished attempt to overcome the challenges in a given situation with a specific audience and a given issue to achieve a particular end. So that is meant by rhetoric. In other words, a rhetorical act is an effort of the speaker that makes to persuade others of her or his point of view. In performing a rhetorical act, a speaker or author creates a message whose shape and form are melded in an effort to persuade an audience. Then messages in the media. Successful politicians and others have been able to put forward messages to persuade a vast audience as to their point of view, right? And Peter Obstler, in his essay, Working with the Media, published in Fighting Tactics, a manual for protecting your family, community, and workplace, says that a well defined message has two key components. First, it is simple, direct, and it should be concise. Then, secondly, it defines the issues on your own terms and in your own words, right? Then let's talk about context, text, and subtext. Context class, often when we think of context, we think of things like the date of work was published, who was written by, who it was written by, or the climate of the time. But context is very important within your fictive universe as well. So context in this sense is all the grounding and guiding information that the audience needs, such as who the characters are, where they are, what time of day it is. So that is the context. Context can also be any other additional information the audience needs to interpret and accurately understand what is happening in the story. The text itself is the easiest one of the three to understand because it is what we often focus on the most. The text is the written part of the story, what happens and what is stated on the page. It is everything you see that is not implied. Subtexts. Take a look at the picture here. That would illustrate actually what subtext is all about. So subtext is what we mean when we talk about reading between the lines. The subtext refers to the underline. It is underneath the text. It is different than contexts. In that context helps us to interpret and understand the story. And subtext happens when the story is bigger than what is on the page. Once the reader has some stability, some grounding with the context, you can make them a particular or participator in the story through the subtext. So, what is the purpose of the message? First is to educate or to inform. The news industry was built on society's interest in learning and keeping up with what is happening around the world. Read newspapers, stories, magazines, features, and new blogs. Listen to radio broadcasts and podcasts, and watch and listen to television newscasts, documentaries, and online video tutorials. Media messages that are meant to educate or inform are typically more neutral and unbiased or objective. That messages meant solely to entertain or perhaps to persuade. To entertain means that some media messages are packaged to entertain, like music, movies, television sitcoms, sports, broadcasts, and social networks are just few examples of media that entertain the audience. Popular entertainment media are especially appealing to advertisers because they are viewed by large audiences. Then message is meant to persuade. As you learned at the beginning of this chapter, a key concept of media literacy is knowing all media messages. Share some point of view, even the ones that are meant to appear objective tone. For example, a post on political blog may influence you think the way by covering the one side of the story. Media literate individuals are able to detect bias and always consider objections or other sides of the story before making up their own minds on an issue, right? So you learn how to weigh things out before you make your own judgment, right? So I know all of you with these topics that we had, previous topics, and with this, I'm happy that you are now a media literate person or students. Then the next question to consider is that how is the message conveyed by the text or the image? The message is organized for impact by knowing the goal and purpose, dropping what is unimportant, chalk what remains, and structure the information for primacy or recency. In addition, messages are conveyed through redundancy. It is important to keep in mind that repetition is not redundancy at all. It may be that you really want to emphasize something, especially those lines that are really important. Redundancy makes a media content interesting as it improves and the content by way of offering two examples and concept, being aware of seductive details, and offering new information or detailed information. In addition, messages by text and image can be conveyed through concepts of tell, explain the concept, or to show, like when someone demonstrates, and then let someone do or to apply and respond, right? Or to reinforce, to redirect uh, the information or an information that you want to persuade to the audience. Then, next question, who is the target audience of the message? It says that the communicator is expected to understand a very basic yet important concept of communication, which is the delivery of listeners in terms of their beliefs, intelligence, characters, dogmas, principles, and views about the topics and issues to be addressed by the source or the speaker. It is believed that one cannot always expect the same results from the same message to different people. Given that scenario, it is important to do research not just about the topics but also the type of audience to be addressed and their values. These values of the audience are considered as the defining factors on how audience will perceive the message of the speech. Then let's also um, consider the listener's educational level. Knowing the listener's level of comprehension through their educational attainments will be crucial as aspect in the entire speech. Then, simply knowing your receiver's educational level will give you enough general hints as to what they are interested about, the things that they care the most, and the values they hold dearly. This is one background of your audience that will help you a lot in planning of your speech. So take note of that. Then listener's age. This is one aspect that you ought to know before planning the content of your media content. The age of your audience will determine the appropriate words and terms you will use in your content. So basically that is really important. How the message of the media content will be received and welcomed by your listeners will always be influenced by their age. Then gender. It is suspected that offending audience shall be avoided at all times. Take note of that. Thus, you should be mindful of the people who are listening to your speech or seeing the media content. By observing the type of audience you will be or it will give you a great advantage, especially if your media content is intended to persuade the audience by giving or by being gender sensitive in your discourse will give you a great advantage in winning the sympathy and trust of your audience, especially with the use of your social media account like the FB page. So let us consider no, who are those people or friends that we have. Okay, so let us be sensitive with the things that we want to share. And then listeners' profession. The line of work of your audience will also affect how they interpret and accept the message of your media content. It is expected that you will have a diverse audience, but you should find a way to collectively address them in a way that they will understand your message the way you wanted it to be understood. Citing personal experiences will always be helpful to you, right? So basically, um, knowing who are your audience will be or are, then I believe that you understand um, what you want to share, okay? Especially sharing your experiences and your personal point of view. Then some evaluated media text. The following is a sample evaluated media text or advertisement using the guide questions that I mentioned to you from the start in evaluating media messages. Now, there are still other images that will be given to you. Um, it would be included in your module. So take a look at with this example. For example, with this, try to check the image. So you have their Glotamax. No? It's a kind of uh, maybe whitening soup or a maybe a capsules, a Glotamax. So you have there the tagline from ebony to ivory. So that's the image, right? So Glotamax results you can see. That's accordingly. Then let's try to figure out the image. So here, wait for a while. All right. Here, so what is the message of the text? So the answers is the text illustrate the effectiveness of the skin whitening product, Glotamax, when people apply it on them, right? Especially the women. Okay. The advertisement portrays that if people buy and use the whitening product, it helps you turn your kayumangi like me brown color into a white one, right? Then what is the purpose of the message? The goal of the advertisement is to catch the attention of the women who wish to have a fairer and whiter skin, and in the process to entice people to buy and choose the brand name Glotamax. Then how is the message conveyed by the text or the message? It is conveyed by duplicating, no, the women's image, right? The lady there. So from dark and to a whiter one, right? So from kayumangi to a whiter skin. So that's how it is being conveyed. And who is the target of the audience? The target audience of the advertisement are brown-skinned Filipina who wish to have fair skin, and those who believe the concept that having fair skin equates to our beauty, like us. And then, what other ways of persuading the image are there? So, the whitening company could use other ways of advertising their products that do not diminish or disparage the beauty of Kayumangi skin, which is innate among us Filipina and other Asian race. They could simply put the fair version of the model rather than detection or depicting her previously brown skin. They could also capitalize on written text testimonial, which is less conversational, right? Because going back here, wait for a while. Going back here, the text, right? The tagline from ebony to ivory. So the company should somehow make it more enticing, no? The text itself, and then capitalize those words to give emphasis. So that's how you analyze the image, right? So those are five guided questions in which how we analyze our or analyze the messages, right? So we will have this activity more with our topic here. So I think that would be all, class. And then thank you again for your continued participation. And then that's all. So if you have questions, feel free to message me directly, or maybe you can coordinate with our class coordinator too. Thank you.